I'm Liz Ginis, Communications and Marketing Director at RDA Sydney. Today I have the great pleasure of being joined by Dr. Lisa Barnes, CEO of Regional Development Australia Central Coast.
The Central Coast is located about 1 hour north of Sydney or 1 hour south of Newcastle. We're very lucky to be in between those two wonderful regions and have access to them both. We're linked by the beautiful M1 and also the railway, so it's fairly easy for people to commute to either Sydney or Newcastle, or from Sydney Newcastle here to the Central Coast. We have a population of just over 355,000 at the moment. That is projected to grow by 2040 by about 88,000 people, so it's a very growth orientated region at the moment. We're very much focused on housing, affordable housing, social housing. Our biggest employer, of course, is the local health district, and we're always on the hunt, of course, for more accommodation for health workers here on the Central Coast. And of course, we're also looking at infrastructure to maintain that growth of our region as well. So RDA Central Coast works very closely with Central Coast Council, so we only have one LGA in our region. And we work very closely with them, in particular looking at what infrastructure priorities there should be for the coast going forward. We also work very closely with our New South Wales Parliament members, and we have 4 located here on the Central Coast. And we also have 2 federal members on the Central Coast, one of which I'm actually having lunch with today. So we, at all levels of government, we have very close relationships with them, because obviously we're all here to look at the Central Coast region and to make sure that going forward we have the capacity to grow, and so the people want to live, work and play here on the Central Coast.
RDA Central Coast has been instrumental in the revitalisation of Gosford.
Yes. Yes.
Can you tell us a bit about that, please?
Yes, so Gosford has been named as our central business district here on the Central Coast. We've had a lot of legislative changes in terms of the building capacity within Gosford City, so we're now building up rather than sort of across. And so, we've just had 3 new buildings opened in Gosford CBD, one of which was 28 stories high. The other, which only opened a few weeks ago, was 22 stories high. We have also some DAs and some progress of other buildings within the Gosford CBD as well, which will be towers made up of residential, hotels, as well as retail and parking. The proximity of Gosford is that it is close to the railway line, it is close to the M1. So we have capacity for people to commute or to commute here.
If we're talking about the railway, I feel like we need to talk about the promise of high-speed rail,
yes.
Which is pretty exciting.
Very exciting. So I attended the industry briefing only last week up at Newcastle, and they are touting Newcastle as the birthplace of Australia's high-speed rail, and we are going to be the third station. So as it's touted at the moment, it will start in Newcastle, there'll be a station at Morisset, and then a station at Gosford. So it will take 30 minutes from Gosford to either Newcastle or to Sydney when that high-speed rail is actually completed. Now, it's only the development phase at the moment, so the next 2 years is just looking at expressions of interest, but what they're touting is that it's going to be very customer focused, so there'll be beautiful super high-speed Wi-Fi, there'll be buffet cars, and of course the ultimate is that you will also go down to Canberra, up to Brisbane, and hopefully one day all the way around Australia. But we are very lucky to be part of the this very new high-speed rail and to be part of that project, which will take some time and it will take some money, but 60% apparently of the high-speed rail will actually be underground. So that will be very interesting to see what that looks like, particularly for Gosford City.
Someone who commuted to Sydney for many years, it's usually a 2-hour door-to-door trip in the morning and then in the afternoon.
Yes.
So the idea of half an hour on a train to get to work is extraordinary.
Sounds amazing, doesn't it?
It definitely does. 25% of the population commutes out of area for work. So obviously it'll be a godsend for them as well. But the idea would also be that people then commute here
Absolutely.
For work.
Yes.
Yeah, and we build, we already are building, we have the Central Coast is I think it's a $2 billion industry around food and beverage manufacturing. And so can you tell me a bit about the work that RDA Central Coast is doing in that particular space? Because I know you're doing a lot.
We are. It's a very exciting time with Regional Development Australia Central Coast and Central Coast Industry Connect. So they look after our mainly food and beverage manufacturers. They secured funding of $17.8 million from the federal government to build our very first food innovation hub. Now, that will open in 2 months' time, so we're looking at expressions of interest at the moment for tenants. Now, the tenants we're looking for are what we call scale-ups, so they're not startups, they're existing businesses that we're hoping will want to do some research and development to scale up their business here on the Central Coast. At the moment, we've actually attracted a few businesses from Sydney, which is fantastic for us as a Central Coast because it means that we've got more capacity for employment. Hopefully it means more university students and apprentices will also get the opportunity to learn on the job, and obviously that will be the future of the Central Coast. So we've got 8 units within the Central Coast Innovation Hub at the moment, which will open at Arimba, and that will be a very exciting time for at least 8 businesses initially to try to scale up, but then once they reach a certain point they will move out and other new industries can actually also come in and again use that facility for research and development. But what we're also hoping is that we'll create a precinct. So we want to create a precinct of food and beverage manufacturers here on the Central Coast where they share ideas, they are collaborative together. They may be in competition with each other, but that creates efficiencies. And we're just hoping that we can create, as RDA, we can be the people that actually get all of those stakeholders together here on the Central Coast for the benefit of the Central Coast region. We've got Sanitarium, we have Mars or Master Foods, we have some big players here on the Central Coast, and we're very lucky. We have, in terms of beverage, we've got Coast, which does oranges and apple juice and all that sort of thing, and they're a big employer on the Central Coast, and they're also supplying or being supplied by our local farmers. So our local farmers are growing the apples and growing the oranges. They're then making them into beverages. They sell to all our local McDonald's here on the Central Coast. So it's been really well endorsed, and most people don't even probably know that they're Central Coast based.
In terms of what RDA Central Coast is doing otherwise, we've touched on obviously housing, we've touched on infrastructure and development, population growth, food manufacturing. What else would you like people to know?
So one of the things that we've been looking at the moment is, in particular, is infrastructure and working really closely with both our federal and our New South Wales members of Parliament. One of the things that we need in particular for Gosford, for example, is that we have a bridge called Edna Street Bridge, which runs from the local hospital through to the main street down Gosford. Unfortunately, it's only 2 lanes and it goes over a railway station. So if there's an ambulance that's trying to get through and there's congestion, that ambulance cannot actually get through. So it's one of our big things at the moment is that I've had quite a few meetings with quite a few state Parliament ministers about this issue, and they're looking at hopefully putting that in the budget for 2027. We also know there's an election coming up next year for our New South Wales Parliament, so we're obviously trying to get them on board in terms of what we would like to see in terms of infrastructure priorities here on the Central Coast. And we're also working with our federal members on that as well, because obviously a lot of things that we do here on the Central Coast requires 3-tier funding. We need Central Coast Council, we need New South Wales Government, we need federal government funding for a lot of what we're actually doing, in particular for roads and railway transport. So we work very closely with them so that I guess one of the things that we try to do as an RDA here on the Central Coast is we're not only looking at what we're doing in the future, but we're also supporting current projects that have been funded by either council, New South Wales Government or federal government, because I think a lot of people keep looking at what we're going to do but don't appreciate what's actually being done already here on the Central Coast. And we're very lucky. We are very well supported by both New South Wales and federal government, but it's important that people understand these are the current projects that they are funding, but these are the projects we'd like to see funded going forward. So as an RDA, we've actually got a list of 12 priorities that we would like to see funded. We know they're not all going to get funded, so we prioritise them. We sort of say, well, look, this intersection is really vital, or this railway station is vital. So we go through that list, then then we go take that list to New South Wales Government and to federal government to find out what their priorities are, so that as stakeholders together, we can actually look at getting projects done together as a group. So the Etna Street Bridge is one of those. I know that speaking to Liesl Tesh only last week, who is our member for Gosford, she's very much supportive of that. Of course, she's only one electorate of many when they looking at the budget for next year. And that's the reason why I'm seeing Dr. Gordon Reid this afternoon, just to make sure that as our federal member, that he's also on board in terms of, well, what are the infrastructure priorities so that the Central Coast can continue to grow and thrive going forward.
Is there anything else that last little hurrah you'd like to talk about?
Well, come to the Central Coast. It's a beautiful, beautiful part of the world. It's easy to get to. It's easy to get around. We've got beautiful beaches. We're very, very lucky in terms of beauty. You know, we're surrounded by trees. We've got, you know, beautiful restaurants and cafes. And we're only going to get better and better. And we're only going to get more tourists, I think, going forward, because now we've got beautiful accommodation for them to enjoy right in the heart of Gosford. They can come up on the train, go and see a Mariners game, stay the night at the hotel, have a lovely meal, and go home with a smile on their face.